Hey guys, this is Luke from Mixing Made Simple, and today I'm going to be talking about parallel compression. So what is parallel compression? Well, parallel compression is where you have a uncompressed signal, and then you have that same signal, and you compress the crap out of it, and then you combine them together so that you get the benefits of the uncompressed signal, the benefits being that the transients are coming through, and in case you don't know what the transient of a sound is that initial uh, pop of a sound. So the best way that I can, the best way I can illustrate this is if you imagine a guitar pluck. So the pluckiness of a guitar, each time that pluck hits, that transient is like the initial, it's like the first part of a sound. And so it's like what gives it like pop and punch. And, if you imagine if you were to take that pluck out of the plucking of a guitar string, it wouldn't sound very good, right? So you get the benefits of uncompressed, so you get the transients, and also you keep the dynamics. And so, what are dynamics? Well, the dynamics is the difference between the quiet parts and the loud parts of a performance or a signal or whatever. So, if you want to imagine what a dynamic performance would be like an orchestra, like a symphony. So there's going to be some really quiet parts, and there's going to be some really loud parts, and it's going to be a very dynamic performance. Contrast that with something like dubstep, or some maybe some like a Metallica record that's just mixed and mastered really loud. It's going to be in your face, and I'm not saying it's not. There's no dynamics at all, but the difference is going to be, it's much less dynamic than something like a jazz record or an orchestra track. So uncompressed, we keep the transients and the dynamics, and then we have the compressed version where we're basically squashing the dynamics, really compressing it so that it's, uh, you know, it's really tight and everything's closer together. And also, when we use a compressor, we're shaping the sound in some ways. And so if we over compress it, we might get a little bit of, it depends on the compressor we're using, but we might get a little bit of distortion maybe, or just some character that gets added to the sound. And we just get a certain sound especially when we over compress something. And so what we do is we have that and we blend it in with the uncompressed signal, and then we get a nice sound out of that. And it's interesting, I just found out that there was actually a famous mix engineer named Andrew Sheps, and I think he exclusively does parallel compression in his mixes, which it's really interesting to me. I don't know exactly how he does it, but that's something to look into if you're interested. I really like listening to that guy talk. He seems like an awesome guy, and he has a lot of great info. Definitely look up Andrew Sheps and listen to what that guy has to say. But yeah, so anyway, so that's parallel compression explained. I'm going to show you a few different ways that we can do this in Ableton. I'm going to have all the timestamps below, so if you want to jump ahead and see how I'm doing things, then you can go ahead and do that. I'm going to show you a few different ways of setting this up in Ableton. It's going to range from simple to more advanced. And the simple is kind of like the least flexible way of doing it, but to more advanced, it gives us more flexibility in how we do it. And so I prefer the advanced ways, but so let's get started. So first of all, you could just take a track and you could double it, and then you could compress one version. You could do this like a vocal or something. Compress one, and then leave the other one uncompressed, and then blend them together, and that would work. I don't really like doing it this way because then if you start to have tracks build up, and it's harder on the CPU, and maybe do it on the vocal, like on one thing in the whole mix, and I think that would work. If you want to do it that way, then great. But there's other better ways of doing it, or other more efficient ways of doing it. So there's that. Another simple way of doing parallel compression is you can have a compressor here, and you can just take the dry wet signal and make it 50%. So it's 50% compressed, 50% uncompressed. But once again, I don't like doing it that way because you just don't really have much flexibility or control over doing it. So now that that's out of the way, I'm going to show you two more ways of doing parallel compression in Ableton, and these ways are a bit more flexible, and they're pretty easy to set up, and so let's get started. So the first way is using send and returns. And so these are sends right here. And this is the return track that goes with, I have it set up with this send right here. And so what a send and return is you send a signal to the return track and it returns back a wet version of that signal. So it returns it back and it's sort of like a parallel version of that signal. So that goes for any of the effects that you use on for sends and returns. And so you can see that I have this called New York because parallel compression and New York compression, they mean the same thing. New York's like the slang term for parallel compression. And I have this glue compressor set up on this, and I have the settings: really fast attack, medium release time, 10-to-1 ratio, really low threshold. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and play the drum group, and then I'm going to slowly push up this send, and you can see what it sounds like when, and I'll show you what it looks like when I'm sending this over to this compressor here. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, and so what you got to be careful of is when you are doing this, you notice how it's getting louder when I send that there. So anytime you use a compressor, I suggest not having auto makeup gain on. So you lower the threshold and the gain turns up automatically. Or when you're doing something like this, you got to be careful because anytime we hear something louder, especially when we're a beginner or intermediate and we just, we're getting used to hearing compression and all that. When we hear louder, we automatically perceive it as better. So you have to really be careful of that. And so for now, I'm not going to match the volume and go back and forth and show you the difference here because what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, in the next thing we're doing, the next way of doing parallel compression, that's how I'm going to show you. But I just wanted to show you that this is a way that you can set up parallel compression. And what I will do is I will play it and I'll just solo the send here and you can hear what it sounds like. So this is what it's sending back. So you can hear it's, super compressed. You hear what it sounds like, really squashed. And so that's sending that back. That's how we can do parallel compression using send and returns. Okay, so now let's get to my favorite way of doing parallel compression, and that's by using an Ableton Audio Effect Rack and using the chains within the effect rack. So I'm going to be using FabFilter Pro C in this example, and what we do is we have the plugin here, right? I have it on the group. To create an audio effect rack, we do it the same way that we would do when we group something together. So just hit Control G. Now you can see it says audio effect rack right here. And now if we go here, we have a chain here. And first what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to play the drums and I'm going to compress it and just hear how that sounds. So let's go ahead and do that. Turn off auto gain. I'm going to make it a hard knee. A hard versus soft knee, by the way, is where if we have a soft knee, it's going to smooth out basically when the signal gets to the threshold. It's just not going to be, it's like more transparent and more smooth and kind of like not as compressed. And so we want to use a hard knee, kind of like we want to have a fast attack. And so I have a harder knee right there to do that. because a hard knee is like just like the compressor is gonna work when it hits that threshold. That's basically how that works. So now I've got that really compressed. Now what we can do is we can right click and do create chain. And so now we have, and I'm going to relabel this dry. So we have the dry signal coming through, which I'll solo and play it. And we have this really compressed version coming through. And the cool thing is now you can adjust the levels of each one and we can blend them together and get this exact sound that we're looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and play with these settings for a little bit, and then I'm going to go ahead and once I have it dialed in, I'll play back and forth just the regular drum group with nothing on it compared to the parallel compressed drum group. Okay, so now I'm going to go back and forth between each one. I've matched the volumes just about as close as I can get them. The parallel compressed version is probably going to sound a bit louder because we are getting rid of the dynamics, right, and bringing that in there. And so you're going to hear more of the background elements clearer. So it might have you might perceive the volume as louder, but I've matched them as close as I can. So I'm going to start with the uncompressed, or I'm going to start with the drum group without any parallel compression on it, and then go back and forth. I'm going to do parallel compression, go back and forth a couple times. So let's start. Okay, so you can hear a difference there, right? So the parallel compressed version, it's a bit more aggressive. It's a bit tighter sounding. It's kind of subtle, but that's kind of what we're going for, right? If we were just to compress the drums, you'd hear a big difference. But the parallel compression, you still keep that uncompressed version in there, and then we add in the compressed version, and it just, I personally like the parallel compressed version a bit better. It's like a little, it's like hard to explain, right? But you can definitely hear a difference there. So that is what parallel compression is. We can do this to anything. You can do it to any instrument you want. You can do it to the vocals. A lot of mix engineers get a great sound with the vocals using parallel compression on the vocals. And so, I definitely encourage you to set some parallel compression up on different instruments and different groups of instruments, and just play around with it and see how it sounds. I hope this video helped you understand what parallel compression is, and if you're an Ableton user, how you can set it up in a few different ways. And so yeah, that's it for the video. If you like this video, please like and subscribe and do all that. It would really help my channel grow. I'd really appreciate it. And yeah, I'll see you next time.